Welcome back, Outriders. So the build that you're going to see right now is the one that I am running currently on my stream. I'm being asked all the time, what is it? Here it is for you guys. I have been running this since the demo, through the full game, through all the expedition scaling, and I'm using it in final game. Adapted, improved along the whole way, and it's probably got a lot more room for improvement too as I experiment with more mods. But for now, remember to subscribe, stay tuned, swing by a live stream as it's linked down in the description below, and get your grind on with us. But here is what I'm wearing. So let's talk about what I'm building exactly. So we're going to bring up the menu here. I'm going to talk about what I have on my gear in a second, but we're going to start with the class because you guys want to know what tree I'm going with. I'm definitely focused into Pestilence, which is top tree for the Technomancer. I go through and I work with a bunch of damage. The things that are important to note is obviously Sniper Mastery, which is something that is very valuable if you're running a rifle build like myself. Of course, working with Exposing Toxin, synergized with Execution, adds a lot of vulnerability. This is really going to help you get things done. More weapon damage, toxicity buffs overall for duration and strength. More sniper damage and piercing. And then, of course, the two sides of the power. You get good at kiting around and avoiding enemies. This extra damage is going to be more useful than the reception of additional damage. I think this is very huge for this build. Of course, the magazine capacity is great. The toxicity, honestly, stacking even further. And then, of course, we have Empowering Intent at the end, as you guys have seen. So that is my tree. As for the skills that I'm currently using, I've got Blighted rounds for being aggressive, of course. Blighted turret, which helps spread the vulnerability, obviously infect and add and spread that toxicity around. And then naturally, I have Cold Snap as kind of a last resort, or even if I'm playing aggressive as an initiation, as you may see in this gameplay, I could just jump into a room, freeze everybody, and just tap, 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 tap when I'm farming. Now, as for the build that I'm currently using, now this is obviously a template for you guys to work within. There's no set way to do this. I found success with LMGs. I really do like rifles as they're just efficient. And as you can see, I have a really well-rolled one. I got spec'd into attributes, crit damage, long range, and close range. So basically, if I'm shooting this thing, we're getting some good damage out of it. I got Killing Spree on to help me farm and get through these as quick as possible. I should have near 3-stack permanent uptime throughout the entire duration of getting this done. Perpetual Mobile is something new for many people that have only played the demo. This is huge. You instantly replenish your magazine if you kill an enemy with 35% or less ammo remaining in your magazine. Realistically, I know a lot of people are infatuated with, infinite ammo builds. Perpetuum is a mod on a gun that can really grant you a lot of freedom and experimentation on any class. This is huge. So I've got a great one. This is all I use. These guns don't matter. This is my baby. Then, scrolling on over here, I got Blighted Turret armor reduction on. It obviously makes them weaker. It's a spammable perk that also synergizes with the skill itself. So when I throw that turret, remember I get that 40% buff because of the Pestilence final ability. That is huge. Then I've got the rest of the stuff that are on the traditional Blighted build. So I have, while the skill is active, killing shots grant you 30% extra bullets. I don't necessarily need that anymore with Perpetuum, but I guess it is kind of an extra barrier. Can't hurt to have, I guess. Then, of course, the additional mag, if I do happen to run out of ammo, which has only happened just a couple of times, it almost never happens. Again, more freedom there if you want. And then, of course, the critical damage increased with critical analysis. And then lastly, I have 15% more damage against enemies that are afflicted by Toxic. Now, obviously, I can find some better rolls here, so some of the other mods are more helpful. But honestly, I've been crushing them. I can do the highest in-game activity short of Eye of the Storm solo with relative ease with this build. And again, this is just a template for you guys to work with, experiment, get out there and try it, and I'm going to talk about what I love about this build. So what makes this build so interesting for me, as a Technomancer, as a guy that started with this, I've always liked the idea of support roles being influential, but for some reason, Techno is one of the strongest in the game currently, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to reign supreme or be the best, but honestly, through the tree that I mentioned, Pestilence works really well. I'm sure with some other legendary sets that I'm going to soon experiment with. I can see if the Scrapnel builds or things like that are very viable. But for right now, Firearms seems to be king. And the more ammo you happen to put down range, and the more multipliers and vulnerability and honestly crit damage, the better. You want to put out as much damage as you possibly can and try to keep your ammo up without having to reload. There's a lot of sources, a lot of mods on not only armor, but as you can see on weapons as well. That should allow you, assuming you're putting in good, consistent damage, to keep pretty much permanent uptime on your Blighted rounds or your Twisted rounds or whatever you happen to be into. And there's definitely a wide variety of ways to build, and there's no set way to do it. but I have basically taken this build from the demo, rode it all the way out to in-game, gotten through all the tiers of Expedition, and now I am here using it, refined, and on the way of perfecting it, and hopefully pushing through Eye of the Storm here in the next day or two. And I think it's an absolutely amazing way to play, and I'm sure there are other variants that I'm going to look into for Technomancer, but for right now, this works. I'm farming legendaries effectively with it. If you're curious about how I'm doing that, I'll leave a link in the description down below. But I'm knocking out legendary farms, 5 or 10 of them per hour, without Eye of the Storm, without any teammates, as a solo player. And it can be done with this build. I think it's a phenomenal build, and I don't know how great the build's going to be with group play, because it revolves around actually getting kills. But it should be interesting. I'd like to experiment with it, but I'm a big fan of the build. I think it's a very strong and dominant build. And obviously, you got to tweak it with the circumstances that you're playing, the enemies you're playing, the teammates that you're playing with. All of this is subject to change and need to be shifted around just so you obviously adapt to those builds. And that's what this whole game's about, is adapting to whatever you're getting into. You're going to get pushed. Things are going to get challenging. Find a way to overcome it. And this build is about as straightforward as it can be. Obviously, there's going to be more complicated builds that come out, but for now, this is an easy early game and solo strategy, and I recommend it to all of my friends. So thank you guys for watching this video. Recommend you guys to subscribe if you're new here. If you made it this far, you're legendary. I appreciate you. Please leave a like. It will help the video get out there. And I will see you with another Outriders video soon.